Welcome to the run through of the Canon 7D Mark II. Today we'll be looking at the outer controls of the camera and show you what all of the knobs and buttons are for and a few displays from those knobs and buttons. Let's get into it. We'll delve straight into the main dial settings. So on the main dial here we have the A+, the A+ in the green box. It's the automatic mode for the camera. Once you've put it in the A+ mode, the camera does everything for you. It'll set the shutter speed, the f-stop, the ISO, and it'll do everything itself according to the weather conditions. Not one that I would recommend. I would suggest that you move on up into the other modes that I'll tell you about as we move on. The second setting on the top here, the P mode. The P mode is for program. Basically, this is a semi-automatic mode. The semi-automatic mode for the camera means that it sets the aperture and the f-stop for you. The shutter speeds all set for you. You can though start to change some settings like the ISO, the white balances and this sort of thing. So it does give you a little bit of flexibility, but not a lot. Once again, not a mode that I would suggest that any of the people that I do training with, I always tell them to keep off that one. The next one on the main mode is dial mode is TV. TV stands for time value. Time value in the terminology that photographers know is shutter speed. So Canon just put TV instead of shutter speed. If you set the mode onto TV, you can then control the shutter speed of the camera. The aperture will then take care of itself, moving up or down. You have to be a bit careful just to make sure that you don't get these settings wrong though, and the image becomes too dark or too bright. So shutter speed, TV. On the mode dial here, the next one is AV. AV is the aperture value. Aperture value is equal to and the same as f-stop. The only difference is the word f-stop means the number related to the AV being the aperture inside the lens. So when you move the numbers up from say f2.8 through to f22, all you're doing is making the size of the aperture smaller or larger. So that can come in future videos along the line. The next one on the mode dial here is the M of course manual. The manual mode, you now to take control of the camera settings yourself. So you have to say, what do I want out of this picture? So you set the f-stop. So you change it to either a greater depth of field, a smaller depth of field. You set the shutter speed relating to the amount of light and speed that you want the shutter to be at, and you take the control of the camera. ISO has to be set in all of the last three settings as well: manual, aperture, time value. On to the next one, which is bulb mode. Bulb mode, that takes care of long exposures. So you can open the shutter from a second to any time that you wish, up to and including as long as the battery will last. So an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, as long as you have a remote control to set the shutter open, and then you release it when you want to release it. So bulb mode is a timing where you control the time that the shutter's open. The next three modes, and I'll put it in the center there, C1, C2, C3 is literally three custom modes. The custom modes are so that you, if you have a certain type of a genre of photography, you can set the camera up and then you assign it to either C1, Custom 2 or Custom 3. Once you've assigned the button to one of those, one of the C1, C2, C3, you can just turn it, the mode dial to that number, and it will be ready set for you for, say, C1 landscape, C2 bird photography, C3 for, say, motorsport. And you could have a good starting point then on the day for your particular genre of photography on the day. Right, moving across to the other side of the top of the camera, we get the various buttons on this side. So we'll start at the front, of course, the shutter button right down here on the front. You can't quite see it. Let me just move it. There we go. This button down here, the shutter button. Don't forget the shutter button has two sensitive spots on it. Half a press takes the focus and the exposure, and once it's done that, you finalize it by pressing it all the way down. The shutter opens and takes the picture. The next little button here next to it is a function button. It's called M-FN, multifunction button. This button can be assigned by using it for lots of different things that the camera does. So for instance, if you wanted to change the button to do something that one of these buttons does along the top, you can change it in the settings to take over other activities from the other buttons. But it's not, I personally don't have my multifunction buttons set up very often, so it's up to the individual to choose what they want. The next dial here, this multi-dial, it works on various things. So once you press one of these four buttons, you either turn this mode dial on the front or the one on the back, which you'll see in a short while. So I'll just wake the camera up. The first button across here on the left hand side, WB, and then it's got the metering, a little sign at the side of it. When we press this button, we see just the metering at this right hand side, and we see the auto white balance on this left hand side. So with the various turns dials, you can change one. With the back dial, you can change the other. So that's white balance and metering. The next one is drive and the autofocus. Drive means, let me just press it again. Drive means that this little square box here, you can, in fact, you change it with a back one on this one. You change it through a timer, a remote, a silent, slow shutter, a single shutter, silent, a multi-slow, and a multi-fast. And that takes multi-pictures when it's in this particular mode. I can't change the focus method at the moment because I don't have a lens on the front of the camera, but that would be done by this top dial. The next one is the flash exposure compensation and the ISO. When you press this button, once again everything disappears and all you've got is the screen that associates itself with whatever you've pressed. So ISO and over and under exposure. The next one is just a simple light that lights up for night for showing you what you're doing. So it's a fairly simple little layout there, and all of these buttons are relayed onto this back screen here. Right, we'll just turn the camera over so that you can see. I'll have to hold it on its corner so that you can see the relevant buttons. On this left hand AF on button, this particular button can be used for two reasons. Some people like rear back, what they call back button focusing. So instead of pressing the shutter button to take the exposure and the focusing, you can use this back button. You then just press the shutter button when you're ready. Or alternatively, this is an auto exposure, auto focus lock, where you can press this button. It takes a reading of exposure and a reading of focus, and then you've got 6 seconds to take the picture with the shutter. The center star button is a customizable button again, so that you can change it to do various things. The next button to the left is the button which you use to change your focus points. So remember the little square on the top with a little grid in it. If I'm going to lay it down so that you can see what it's doing on the back screen, etc. Right, so we move on to the button for giving us the autofocus point selection. Once we've got the autofocus point selection, there's a toggle on this dial at the top here. We can just toggle that to go through the various. So that's the autofocus manual selection spot autofocus. We can go the 1-point autofocus. We can have a group, and you can see them changing in the center here. We can have a 9 group. We can have a zone. We can have a larger zone, or we can have them all. So we just keep going round in a circle and coming back to the single point focus. We can choose any of those, and as I said a minute ago, once we've got them selected, we can move them up. So even if you chose a group, then that group you can move up, or you can move it sideways by the other dial at the front. So you can move it to a group anywhere you want. So once we go on from there, we'll set that one as the being all of these settings show up on this back screen. So we'll move on to the back screen, and basically some of these are a repeat of what we've already done. So this is the ISO setting. The ISO at the moment is in auto, and we access this screen by pressing the Q button. This Q button just stands for quick menu, so it goes straight to there, and we can move then through the various buttons by the toggle button here. And we'll start with the outside one. We've got a single shooting button here. If we press that, it brings up all the different menus. So it's high consequential shooting, low, silent single, silent multi, and a couple of timer ones. If we go to the next one, which we'll go across to, we've got the evaluative metering. The metering was the same as what's on the top, so you can have various meterings. So you can have evaluative metering, you can have partial metering, you can have spot metering, or you can have center weighted average. Some cameras don't have 4, some just have 3. So, but Canon do have 4. The next one I can't do anything with at the moment because I haven't got a lens on. That allows you to change from manual focusing to autofocusing, etc. So it does bring you up a few different menus. So if I go up one, so we'll come across to this side. This is your standard mode for your picture style. You've got automatic, portrait, landscape, neutral, monochrome, etc. So, and you've got 3 that you can set up yourself. So it does make it a bit easier. The next one across is the auto white balance. you've got various auto white balance, you've got sun, shade, cloudy, tungsten, fluorescent, flash, and a couple of user defined ones, so you can set what you want. The next one across is white balance adjustment, shift bracketing adjustment. I would strongly suggest not changing this one. It's only for the very professional people who want to change the colour balance. The only thing is, if you do change the colour balance, I must admit, if you forget to change it, then you will have funny looking pictures in some cases. Right, the next one across is the lighting optimizer, the auto lighting optimizer. You can set that in different strengths here: strong, medium, small and off. So what that does, it makes the darker areas brighter and the brighter areas darker. So you can level the image off a little bit and not have so many shadows. The next one across is the cards. In this particular instance, we've got just one card in, and the one card is on large. If we had two cards in, there would be another one showing here, and in this box here it would be showing what that card is and what it's set on, whether it's large, medium, raw or whatever. Further on up we go, and we'll go across to the custom controls. Here you can change all of these buttons on the camera to do various things. So all you do, you choose a button and choose what you want to do with it. So each one, choose that and you can set it as that, choose that, you can set it at that, etc, etc. And you can switch and swap the buttons about as you want them. Coming across one, we've got the flash exposure compensation. Once again, I wouldn't change the flash exposure compensation. You can change it from here, and you think to yourself when you take your next pictures, why is my picture a bit dark? And it's because you've changed it in camera, you're looking on the back of the flash, and correspondingly the two don't match. The camera does take over the control of the flash, so do be careful. Next run across, you can change the under and overexposure of the image. In other words, what you're doing, you're fooling the camera into believing something. So you set your camera up, you then change the change the exposure up or down, and that'll give you a bit of overexposure, underexposure, making it brighter or darker. This top corner, at the moment, it's on C2. That's one of the custom settings. If we was to change that to one of the ordinary settings, as you can see, it just changes and brings you up a few more settings. M, manual, it's on 1/100th of a second. I haven't got a lens on, so it's not showing me an f-stop, but it would do if it had a lens on. If I turn it again, you'll see that now that I'm on AV, the shutter speed's gone, but the f-stop's showing up because AV relates to f-stop. If I put it onto shutter speed, the shutter speed shows up at what it's set at, but the f-stop's gone because the f-stop's going to take care of itself. Right, on and upwards, ISO. So all we do is set the ISO 250, whatever we want it at accordingly. And of course, the higher the number, you're making the sensor more sensitive to the light. Okay, move on. We'll just go through these one or two buttons. I can't get them all in at once, so I'll do them in a couple of runs. Right, this top one here, the button at the top is for taking photographs or for doing video. The red one is video. The white one is for the pictures. A little toggle switch here that knocks it from left to right and puts it in either picture mode or video mode. The button in the center, if it's on the camera setting, once you press the button in the center, it will bring up on the back screen here a live view of what your lens is looking at. so you will be able to see a live view on the back of the screen. Alternatively, if it's in the video mode, you will press the center button and it will, camera's gone to sleep, and it will give you the start and stop the video. The next button down, this one is just a toggle button for moving around on the screen. This toggle button is for when you're in this mode and you just want to go through, like when we was on the shutter screen, I just pull this button just to bring it across into the different modes accordingly, and it moves that. The center one then just moves other buttons as well. So the next one, let me just get it down to the last three. The next one, the Q menu button, that just brings this Q menu up. If you're on a different button, and I'll show you possibly in a minute, I'll come to that in a sec. Right, the next bit is the main dial is for doing certain things within here, for changing them. Sometimes you use this main dial, sometimes you use the front dial that I showed you a minute ago, this one here. So those two work in comparison with each other. So the set button, once you've chosen a setting on the back screen, so for instance if I want to look at that, I press the set button. Once I've got it, I press 250 and on it goes. If I move that to say 640, I press the button and it's set it to 640. So this button brings things up, sets it and takes it away again. The bottom one here where it says lock, it locks and stops this dial from doing certain things. Right, across to the top side here, and we'll start with the info button. If the screen's on here, what it does, it brings up a different series of actions on each press. So at the moment it's on the Q menu screen. You can then switch the Q menu screen and have nothing on. Let me just move it so you can see it. Then when you press the button again, you get all of the settings on the camera. Once you press it again, you get a level, so that when you're out doing, say, landscape or something, you've got a level so that you can keep your camera square. Press it again and you come back to the Q menu. Just put it back a little. So the info button is twofold. If you put an image up on the back of the screen and you toggle through the info button whilst there's a picture on the screen, then what it'll do, it'll give you all the information about the settings on that particular image. It'll give you the shutter speed, the f-stops, everything else, the ISOs, all about the image that you've just taken. And then if it's a little bit slow or a bit dark or anything like that, you can see how to change it accordingly. Next button across to the left here, and I'll leave a bit of the screen in so you can see it. The menu button, it brings up a menu which we're going to do in the second half. I'm not going to go through any of these menus at the moment because there is a lot of them and it'll take too long in one video. So we'll show you those later on. And the majority of these do relate to a lot of the Canon cameras. This particular camera, the Canon 7D Mark II, is the first of the or the lower of the professional cameras, so it has on more than some of the others. So but the 7D, the 5 and the 1D are the ones that are the professional cameras which have more on them, so I will show you those later on. So with this next button, the filter button, you've got the picture style, which was up at the top as well, so you've got that in 2 or 3 places. We've got the next one, which is the multiple exposure. It combines multiple images, and if you press the set button, it takes you straight into the multiple exposure screen where you can change all of these various settings. The next one is the HDR. HDR is high dynamic range, and shoot images with a wide tonal range or add effects to resemble paintings. I use this, and I use it very regular, but I only ever use it on this natural setting. I don't set it to do anything else except the natural settings. What it does, it makes the darker elements lighter and the lighter elements darker, and it combines the image so that you don't have any blotchy blacks or blown out whites. So very, very good thing to use if you've got it on your camera. The next one down is rate, and if we had a picture on the back here, if we press the rate, we could rate that picture if we really liked it as a 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 star. So you can rate an image accordingly and on the screen. I can't show you that because I've got no pictures on the camera. So the next one down, if there was an image on the screen, once again, if we press the magnifier, we can get it to come up larger so that we can see if it's sharp on the screen. So that gives you a good idea as to how sharp your images are. So let's just pull it across a little. On the next button, this is to look at your images. When I press this, it'll say no images. But if there was any images there, we would get the pictures up there and we could toggle through them via the switches accordingly. This back dial, the big back dial here. So the next one down, if you've got an image that you don't want, you can delete it accordingly with this button here. So anything to do with blue, once you've pressed these buttons, it's all to do with the picture. Now, if you've got a picture up on the back screen and you press this button, you'll see a little blue emblem there, and that takes you into a different view again. So do look at all of the buttons, and if something on the camera relates to blue, it's something to do with the picture. Okay, right. One thing I'm going to just do, because we're close to it, I'm going to try and hold the camera in such a position so that you can see it. This little dial here on Canon, well, all cameras have got it. You'll see a little plus and a little minus. The plus means plus optic, the minus means minus optics. And what you're doing, you're setting this camera up for your eye. So you put a lens on, you look through the lens, you half press the focus, you get it nice and sharp, and then you turn this and you'll see the picture go blurred, and then you come back and it'll go sharp again, and then it'll go blurred, and you get it into the position where it's the most sharp to your eye. Alternatively, you look through the viewfinder and you look at all the numbers. After you've half pressed the shutter, you look at all the little numbers inside the viewfinder, and you turn this dial until those numbers come as sharp as possible. So, and that's when the camera's set up for your eye. Just do it for the eye that you view through to take the pictures. Okay, right, moving on to the last one or two things. On the front of the camera here, if I can get it to turn so that you can see it, this is just the lens release for the lenses. So you press that, turn the lens, let me just show you, turn the lens in a anti-clockwise, take the lens off, be very careful not to get any dust in here, because inside of course is your mirror box and your sensor, and you don't want any dust in there. On the side here, the little button is for the flash. Just press the little button and the flash will pop up once the camera's on. So at the moment it's gone to sleep, so let's just wake it up, see if it'll work. There you go. So that's the pop of the flash just popped up. It's a manual flash on the 7D. So the opposite side here, so to give you an orientation again, there's the top of the camera, there's the lens, there's the bottom, This button on the bottom right hand side, if once you're focused you press that button, it gives you, if you can see it, I never personally see a result from it very often, but you'll see your image go darker, and what it's doing, it's giving you a live view of the depth of field. But personally myself, I struggle to see it working properly. It works and you can see it, but it's not particularly brilliant. So give it a go, see what you think. Everything else on the camera is just for normal use. You can have a light coming out of here to aid focusing. You've got the side here, bit close to the lens there. Let me just put it down a bit. You've got a sliding compartment which you can slide up, it flicks out, and you've got 2 cards in here. I've only got one in at the moment, which is a CF card, which is a large card. I'll just pop that out so that you can see it. That's a CF card, it's a large card. Let me just put it back in. The other one is an SD card. Right, thank you very much for being with me through that. I hope it's helped quite a bit. The explanation of the buttons was very quick, but at least it'll give you some idea of what they're all for. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below and we'll try and answer any questions that we've got. Don't forget, there is a second part to this video. I've done the extremes of the camera, the extremity. What we'll be doing next time is we shall be looking at the menu inside the camera on the back screen, and we shall be showing you what the menu's for, what they do, and how you change them and why you change them. So we'll see you on the next time round. Thanks very much. Take care.